All right, if you are getting CEUs, Carla has asked you to put your name in the chat only if you are getting CEUs. So if you could do so. All right, so welcome this afternoon to everybody who's joining us to the Discover Wellness While at Home webinar series. This may be your first session, or it may be one of many. My name is Chelsea Byers-Gerstenecker, and I'm a family life educator. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Molly Hofer. Molly, you want to join? Molly, I think you're muted. Molly has no sound. Got it. Hold on a second. Carla, can you unmute Molly? So I'm an educator in Champaign, Fort Iroquois, and Vermilion counties. And while we get Molly set up, Molly is an educator up in Cook County.
Molly,
I'm here now.
Perfect.
Yes, I'm here.
I know you were there, sorry.
My button was not unmuting for some reason.
So here is a map of all the educators. You can see there are 5 of us currently serving the state of Illinois. This kind of helps give a little bit of a visual of where we all are. Molly, anything you want to add?
No, just welcome everyone. I'm glad to be here today to co-present with you, with Chelsea.
All right. So today's program is called Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate? This is a program about the importance of making a plan for passing along personal possessions. It's called Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate because it is actually based on a true story where family members were deciding who was going to receive their grand's pie plate. Several family members actually wanted it because the memories it held for each of them. The pie plate, as we like to call this program, is a family inheritance planning program and was developed originally back in 1994 at University of Minnesota. Research on this topic is still ongoing through the Family Inheritance Project led by my colleague and friend, Dr. Marlene Stum, who's worked on this project from its inception. And today's program is an adapted version of her program, Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate? So when we look at this picture, you know, it's a family home, right? So looking at this picture in the chat box, I would like you just to throw in the chat box things in here that people might find of value, or that they might want when a loved one passes away because of sentimental value, monetary value. What kind of things do you see in this picture that you think people may want if this was their loved one's, these were the loved one's items?
Chelsea, I see wood cabinet, furniture, teapot, everything, blue bowl, violin, rug.
Fantastic. That's a good list to start with. Almost everybody has valued personal belongings that have meaning for them and their family members. Considering none of us go through life, right, without accumulating stuff. So paring down and transferring of personal property is inevitable for all of us due to necessary moves or downsizing, maybe lifestyle changes, or eventually death. So today's workshop is going to focus on an issue that few families escape: distribution and transfer of personal possessions. So when we think about this, this is an issue that impacts families regardless of their income, their assets, cultural background, because everybody has stuff, all right? In the chat box, I want you to throw in examples of possessions that you own right now that hold special memories for you and your family, that either you got from somebody that were passed down to you or that you want to pass on to somebody else. So throw in the chat box things that you inherited or things that you want to pass on.
pictures, china hutch, rings, paintings, sideboard, walnut table, grandma's crystal glass, grandpa's rocking chair, oil paintings, lots of good stuff.
Okay. So most people do have special possessions or keepsakes that may or may not have financial value, but quite often have emotional value for one person or more in the family. So today we're going to look at understanding how strong emotions in family relationships can contribute to challenges in transferring personal property. We're going to learn how titled and non-titled property differ and the importance of planning for the transfer of both. Identify factors to consider when thinking about transferring non-titled property. Investigate the distribution options and consequences. Learn some strategies to start inheritance planning conversations with potential receivers, and then learn to recognize and potentially head off those potential sources of conflict. Of course, with people, there's always that potential for conflict, right? So, when we think about families, planning for the transfer of personal belongings can be difficult. It can be highly emotional. It can involve complicated family relationships that can obviously add to stress. Today's families vary widely and seem to be more complex than generations past. People are living longer, which can mean a variety of things. For some, decisions about property can involve multiple generations, maybe even up to 4 generations, right? Spouses, siblings, adult children, grandchildren, even great-grandchildren. Because of remarriage, there's blended families. Decisions about property transfer could include stepchildren, step-siblings, in-laws maybe, domestic partners, friends, or even others. Today, more than ever, there's family mobility, which can further complicate decision-making concerning who gets what because of distance. Maybe they're not around. Another consideration is timing. The timing of when somebody makes decisions could influence one's priorities and choices that they make. So for example, choices considered by a couple downsizing from a large family home to a condominium may not be the same as an adult child who needs to quickly sell items because their loved one requires long-term care and they're unable to independently make their own decisions. So when we think about all this, frequently transfer decisions are made during stressful times, like a previous example I mentioned, like when families are trying to quickly make decisions, right? Or sometimes they're made after death, another high stress moment. So planning ahead allows for more choices, the opportunity for communication, and hopefully fewer misunderstandings and conflicts. So because we all have stuff, we are here to learn more about passing along our items. So let's contemplate a question for a bit. What happens to your belongings when you die? Who decides who gets what? And how can these decisions be made during your lifetime? So these questions do not require an answer, but they are food for thought for the rest of today's workshop. So let's start by looking at the difference between titled property and non-titled property. All right, so when we think about titled property, simply put, is property that has written documentation that shows ownership. So in the chat box, I want you guys to write down examples of what you think of when you think of titled property.
Yep, car, land, house, farmhouse, timeshare, savings.
You got it. I think you hit all of my sample examples there. All right. So today in this session, we're going to focus more on non-titled property. All right. And when we think about non-titled property, many of the items that we own are non-titled property, right? Where there's no documentation of ownership, compared to titled property, such as the cars, the real estate, land, things like that, machinery maybe. So earlier, when you threw in the chat box, items that either you received from a loved one or you want to pass on, those were probably a lot of examples of non-titled property. I think I saw jewelry, furniture, maybe musical instruments, dishes. So a lot of times, those are the items that may be of interest to your loved ones, or items that you want or want it from your parents, right? So these are the things that we're going to be thinking about as we move forward with today's session. But as we think about making a plan, it is to think about both titled and non-titled, but have a conversation more about these non-titled items that I think a lot of times owners, we don't think about that plan as much. All right. Who ends up with non-titled property is an important issue that is often ignored by families. So even with a will, there can be vague wording sometimes, such as divide evenly among the children. So even this leaves the actual decision-making up to the family, instead of the owner taking the time to develop a more specific transfer plan. In fact, attorneys who work in estate planning often say that it's the personal property, not the titled property, that often causes the most problems when settling an estate. Because it's the emotional value attached to those personal belongings that makes the transfer issue so challenging, right? Titled property can be very clear, but oftentimes, we don't have a plan for those non-titled items. Have you ever really wanted an item from a parent or great aunt or uncle? What has stopped you from expressing your wish? So in the chat box, say what has stopped you from sharing. What has stopped you from expressing a wish that you wanted something from somebody, like a parent or a great aunt or uncle, somebody that you might have, there was something that you really, really wanted. Seems greedy, feels rude to bring up, embarrassment, too morbid. It's like you're thinking about their death, family arguments, awkward, uncomfortable, bad timing. Okay. Why don't you think more family members make plans for their items? Why do you think people don't make more plans for their own items? They don't think they will die. Some people don't want their things. I'm trying to read, they go so fast.
They don't like to think about it. They're afraid.
Confused on who should get it. All right. You guys are awesome. All right, let's talk about these things. All right. So I'm sorry to tell you, there is no magic formula for transferring property, but we can't tell you what's best for you or your family, but we do want to give you some ideas to think about today. And hopefully we're going to talk about some distribution items or distribution possibilities. So hopefully after today, you'll have some good things to think, food for thought, things to think about. And maybe you'll settle on a way that you think might be good for you and your family, all right? But first, let's talk about factors to consider, right? So the first one is the sensitivity of the issue. So yeah, bringing up death can seem disrespectful. Death or impending death is difficult to face and talk about for many. Even when our parents are healthy, adult children may not be ready to have this conversation and vice versa. So while death is hard for most to accept, it doesn't keep it from happening. So sometimes family members get defensive that it's too early to discuss these things. Sometimes we think as a family, this just isn't going to be a problem. Not my family, Families think that communicating and planning is going to go smoothly. And they're often surprised to find out that, there will be differing opinions, especially about fairness. If you have any middle children out there, there'll probably be differing opinions about fairness. That's supposed to be a little bit of a joke. There's nothing of value, right? How many times we teach this a lot. We've been teaching this for many years. A lot of times people say, oh, I have nothing anybody would want. Nothing of value. And a lot of times this isn't about the monetary value of things. This is about the emotional value of things, right? So if we think about, the cost of a pie plate, it's not about the economics behind it. It's about that emotional tug behind it, all right? A lot of people mentioned this one. You might appear greedy. Some may fear might appear greedy and they don't want to bring up that topic, right? That's a tough one. Some families think that even if they make a plan, nobody's going to listen to them anyway. So, or on the flip side, if they speak up and share their desires or their wishes, nobody's going to listen to what they want. So it can kind of go both ways. Some families believe that if you have these conversations, things won't be the same. The decisions about property often come at times of loss, which can add to the difficulty. Again, those stressful times of life. So past family conflicts and feelings between family members may create problems. Sometimes during these stressful times, old conflicts can re-arise. Something to be prepared for.
Chelsea, in the chat box, a person said that when her mom had a diamond necklace, she at the time said, "Oh, I would like to have that someday." And I kind of came from that family orientation also, where we would tease each other, "Oh, put my name on that. That's going to be mine someday." And it's easy to say that in that moment, but it's really emotional and hard sometimes after the fact when you are making those decisions.
Yes. Because somebody brought that up right now, and I'm sure there's many people that can have similar stories, right, about that. I think we'll have time to share this. I'm going to read a real quick Dear Abby letter because you brought that up. And this, actually, you know what, Molly, can I jump into your part later when you
Sure.
When you're talking, probably it'll actually be good there. So one thing to do is if you're going to actually have a family meeting about this, or if you make plans to go through your items and think, what do I want to do with this? It's good for you to decide what you want to accomplish. So set some goals and agree about what is to be accomplished. So the transfer method you choose may vary depending on the goals you identify. So in thinking about those goals, think about what's most important to you. And that's why there's no right way. Families do it all different kinds of ways, and there's no one right way. So if you have a co-owner, so when we say that, like a spouse, a significant other, you need to also know what's important to them, right? So identify your goals, and that's going to help you determine what you, and if there's another person, what they want to happen. So when you think about goals, what kind of goals might you have? All right, so here are some frequently identified goals that people typically have. So the first one is maintain harmony, right? They want everybody to still speak to each other after this is done. They want to ensure that everybody's going to work through this process and get through any conflicts or disagreements. The second one is kind of peace of mind. The owner wants to have a plan and be done with it. I can say I know some people in my family that might be their plan of attack. Let's just attack it and be done. Preserve family memories or keepsakes. They want belongings to go to individuals who are going to truly value and appreciate them. And so they're going to probably pass them on in that spirit. If you have a lot of pictures, maybe they go to somebody who's big in genealogy. One time teaching this, I had a gentleman say that he had a grand piano and his daughter really wanted that piano. But he said, my daughter doesn't take care of anything. Everything she has gets trashed. And he said, I would really like to give it to my son. And I said to him, only you can make a decision. Do you want to make your daughter happy, or do you want that piano to stay in good condition? And I said, you have to decide what your goal is. And, nobody can answer that but him. Like, what is his goal with that piano? And so, that's up to him, right? But he knows his children, and he knew that about his daughter. So, again, I can't answer those questions for anybody. We just give you food for thought. The next one is be fair to all involved. So the owner wants all family members to have a chance for their points of view to be heard before decisions are made. They want everybody to feel that decisions are fair. And in a little bit, we'll talk about fair. And the last one here is contribute to society. So maybe there's something that they really believe in, so they want to somehow know that somebody else benefited from it. So some examples of that is, I used to work at a veterans home, and so people who had military items would donate them to the VA, and we would, put them in shadow boxes so the veterans could see them, so that there would be like a lot of donations to the VA. Or a friend of mine, they were going through her grandma's stuff, they found a whole bunch of journals, and she journaled the history of Joliet, the expansion of it, like when neighborhoods were added, when buildings were built in town, and kind of just literally the geographical expansion of Joliet. And after her death, she read through all of those journals, and then she donated them to the Historical Society in Joliet. And so, you can always do donations that kind of serve another purpose, right? To serve the public or serve a source. So that's something to think about. So in the workbook, on page 1, when you have time to look at it, we have some goals that you can kind of look at and decide, what's important to you. And once you decide what your goals are, it might help you then decide, your plan of attack for how you want to move forward. So in this one, adult siblings have been known to break off relationships with each other over how personal property was divided. I'm sure there are many examples out there that from your personal history, that I know from personal history. But actually here is where I'm going to read the Dear Abby, because this is good. I think this is pretty classic. Heirloom promises spark family feud. Dear Abby, my mother has an heirloom that has been handed down several generations within my deceased father's family. Over the years, she's apparently told each family member he or she could have it upon her passing, or so they say. About 4 years ago, I was talking to Mom long distance, and she asked, what would I like to have upon her passing? I replied, oh, nothing. Well, except some of the things I have given you over the years. And I wouldn't mind having the heirloom. She said everyone wanted it, but because I had always shown an interest in family history and no one else in the family had, I should be the one to have it. She said Dad would have liked that. I said, well, if you want me to have it, please write my name on it because I won't get it otherwise. She said she didn't feel that our family was that way. Sometime later, I was visiting and noticed my name was permanently and discreetly written on the heirloom. Mom now says that the family is in an uproar and she does not remember writing my name on it. The family is claiming I either wrote my name on the heirloom myself or coerced her into doing it. Not true. My mother has serious health problems, one being memory related. She refuses to tell other family members that she made up her mind long ago and wrote the name on it herself. I think she knows she wrote it, but wants to avoid family strife, and that is why she won't acknowledge her actions, which means I'm taking the brunt of this. I feel Mom was of sound mind when she made her decision, so what's the problem? I'm not a dishonest person, and it upsets me immensely to be falsely accused when I'm guilty of nothing more than saying I wanted the heirloom. How do I get this cleared up? Wrongly accused in Missouri. You're wrongly accused. By promising the heirloom to various family members over the years, your irresponsible mother has guaranteed that there will be dissension upon her death. That everyone who has promised the item now wants it is understandable. Because she is memory impaired, she may actually not remember having put your name on the item when it was done. The question you must answer is which is more important to you, the heirloom or your family? If it's the latter, then a possible solution would be to draw straws for it when the time comes, or have it appraised and everyone who wants it bid on it so the money can be divided among the losers. So that's just one example that shows how dissension can happen very quickly over one item, as well as if we don't talk about it, there can be conflict, right? And you gotta love I love the answers in, the Dear Abbeys and Dear Ann Landers, but there was another one in AARP a long time ago too, about this kind of topic. So this is not a new topic. It's a timeless topic. So, things can happen, right? I've heard statements like, she went in and took the good stuff and left me with the junk, or he knew I wanted that footstool and he threw it out in spite of me. So there's a lot to be thought about when we think about this. So the more we have a plan, there's less room for conflict. And if we're really good about communicating what the plan is and sharing with others, then that is a better plan as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Molly, and she's going to talk about what FAIR means and some distribution options. So Molly, you ready to take it away?
I am. Go ahead, next slide. Hello, everyone. As Chelsea was talking about family strife, it's interesting because how many of us have heard either coming out of our own mouths or hearing other people say things like, oh, the relationship was never the same, or they never really spoke to each other again. And things like this can happen, and it is over possessions. It is over stuff. And sometimes it's not only over stuff, it's over the family conflict or baggage that comes to the table. And we all know that we're all human. And as humans, we agree, we disagree, and we come with our own embedded relationships. But a lot of times, the reason why there are disagreements, it's because of differing definitions of fair. And someone wrote here, Lisa, plus the parent is no longer there to intervene. And that is exactly the entire crux of this workshop series. We have Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate for a reason, because we want to avoid family conflicts. And the way to do that is for a person who owns the possessions to make the decisions prior to death. And that is, in a nutshell, what you can take away today. Thinking and having a plan and following through with the plan yourself is the most assured way to reduce the potential for conflict. And it can be hard. There can be hard feelings, absolutely, regardless. But if you talk about your definition of fair as the owner of the possessions, that is a good place to start. So when we think in terms of fair, fair can mean a couple of things. It can mean equally distributing our possessions. It can mean equitably distributing our possessions. And for most of us, it will be probably a combination of these two things. When we think in terms of equally distributing our possessions, equal is equal is equal, isn't it? Equal might mean each person gets the same number of items. If I have 20 pieces of Waterford, I'm dividing it 5 to each of my 4 grandchildren. Equal might mean equal in dollar value. This is worth about this much and this is worth about this much, so I'm dividing it that way, kids. Or equal might mean emotional value. Perhaps I have a rocking chair, I rocked every one of you kids and every one of the grandkids in it, but we also have a beautiful bassinet that's been passed down from generation to generation. It may not be equal in dollar value, but it's equal in emotional value. So equal is equal, really. When we think in terms of equitable distribution, we take into account circumstances or needs of family members. So I may equitably distribute based on financial needs of my receivers, emotional needs, physical needs. I may give something to my college grandson because he's just starting out and he can't afford to buy something. I may give something to a granddaughter because she has always commented on a beautiful piece in my house every time we were together, from her childhood to adulthood. So that might be an emotional reason to leave something to a grandchild. Or physical needs. Again, that kind of goes along with financial. I'm giving this to you because you don't have one of these and can use it. Or in one of my classes, one of the attendees said, we had a family sleigh. They didn't say sled, they said sleigh. She said it was as big as a car and it was in the front yard of our house. Well, she lived in a big farmhouse, in a big farm, with a lot of land. So the sleigh fit appropriately on her land, and 3 of her 4 kids wanted the sleigh. And she decided to give it to the person who was in close physical proximity to their house. So Physical needs, physical proximity, I put there as a way to equitably distribute. Something might be so big that you have to give to someone who lives close by. You might equitably distribute based on age or birth order. I'm giving this to you because you're the oldest, you because you're the youngest, you because you're my only daughter. Marital status, family name. I'm leaving this to my only grandson because he'll carry on the name. It might be a family crest. And then there might be special circumstances why you equitably distribute something to someone. Gifts for special occasions. For my niece's 16th birthday, I gave her a sapphire ring that I received from my parents on my 16th birthday because I have a son, I don't have a daughter, so I left it to her or gave it to her. I didn't leave it to her, I gave it to her. As far as maybe there's a caregiver in the family who, a family member who cared for the person who owns the possessions, who receives something, and that's an equitable way to distribute based on care received by someone. It might be because of a special interest. I am leaving my genealogy to my niece because she is the only person in the family who has taken an interest in genealogy. So those are some reasons why we equitably distribute. We typically do both when we're thinking. We try to think of what is most fair, but we also try to think of circumstances of family. Now, another reason we talk about fair, or another aspect of fair might be, is it fair as far as who's involved in the transfer of possessions? Sometimes people or family members have different feelings about who should be involved when the transfer occurs. The issue of who is and who is not family may arise. Is it fair that one daughter-in-law is involved, but sons-in-law are not, for example? Is it fair that one son receives items now because he can use it and other children have to wait? So decisions like these should be spelled out by the owner. What you deem as fair is what you deem as fair as the owner of the possession. So if you want to give something to a son, gift in your lifetime because he can use it, but you want someone else to wait because you're still using a possession and you want to wait until you're gone, that is absolutely another definition of fair. So the moral of this story is whatever your definition of fair is needs to be communicated to family. Okay, moving on, Chelsea. The Winnie the Pooh book. This is an example of a fairness predicament. It's a little scenario, and you see here there are 3 children involved, or siblings, the oldest daughter, a middle daughter, and a son. And they are talking about one piece or one possession that they all want. And this is coming from the daughter's words, the oldest daughter. Recently, my parents died within 3 months of each other. They had a will, but had not made decisions about their personal possessions. My sister, brother, and I have been going through the house and making decisions about who gets what. It's gone pretty smoothly. There is only one item in the whole house that all 3 of us want. It's the Winnie the Pooh book that Mom and Dad read to each of us when we were young. It has always been kept in the living room on the corner bookshelf. So when we have groups that we meet with face-to-face, we usually banter a little bit about this as far as who should get this book, why, what would be fair, what rules might be used. And really, again, what this boils down to is communication. Communication is important here to find out what others are thinking, to brainstorm different ideas as far as what would be fair. Would it be fair to share and take turns since a book is small? Would it be fair to draw for it and let someone have the book? Would it be fair to have someone house the book for a fashion and then give it to somebody else? So this is a good example of fairness, a fairness predicament, and a way to resolve that. As far as what this family did, she answers, for now the book is staying where it has always been. My brother has moved into the house and we get together a lot. I guess we're leaving it there because we can't figure out who should get it. So their lack of action is their decision at this point. And sometimes we agree to disagree. Sometimes we may go along with something because most of the siblings did go along with something, and that can harbor some pent-up feelings of frustration or upset. So really, it's important probably to talk about it as it's happening as best we can. Now, easier said than done. I absolutely understand that and have been through it myself, but it is important to try to talk without blaming, try to talk without pointing fingers, and really come down to what is important as a family and what will work best as a family. So let's talk about the meaning of our objects. Another factor that we need to consider is, what do my things mean to other people? What do my things mean to me? Now, your family may indeed have a pie plate, something in your family that more than one person wants, something in your family that is very special to all of you. That is something you'll have to think about. You may have things in your family that nobody wants. I often get that as the more important issue with my audiences. It's not that I have people fighting over one thing, it's I have my family members telling me they don't want my things. And that can be a predicament too, especially in the world today. We often talk about our younger generations today not registering for China and not registering for silver and being really more minimalistic and wanting to simplify and not really enjoying the Hummels and the Yadros and the Waterford. And it is something to consider, but when you have something that nobody wants, it's important to perhaps maybe shelve that for a while or let it lie for a while, because oftentimes when someone in the family doesn't want something today, it doesn't mean that they won't want it, a long time from now, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Times change, people's tastes change. I know when I was in my 20s, I don't think I even thought about my grandmother's Hummels or that I would want them. But now that I'm in my 50s, it's some of those things become more important to you. So when nobody wants some of your possessions, kind of shelving the idea for a while might be the best bet. As far as the meaning of your objects, you may, if I was an 83-year-old person, I may enjoy a lamp in my possession that I think all of my other family members would probably love. I may be thinking about giving it to my 23-year-old granddaughter. Now, the taste of an 83-year-old person and a 23-year-old person may be similar, they may be different. And the only way to really understand the meaning of your objects and what they mean to others is to communicate that and to find out. If you remember Dick Van Dyke, the Dick Van Dyke Show, some of you on the call certainly will remember that. In one of the episodes, Laura, the wife of Dick Van Dyke, Rob Petrie, inherited a brooch from her mother-in-law. It was a brooch of the United States, and she would wear it on her little lapel. And the brooch was as big as the palm of a hand, so it was gigantic. And Laura hated the brooch, but she wore it whenever the mother-in-law was going to be over. Well, the long and short of it, it's a comedy, so you can imagine the brooch was destroyed. It was accidentally put down the garbage disposal. And Laura was so upset that she took it to a jeweler and had the little gemstones that represented every one of Rob's family in the brooch put back on the brooch and had the brooch remade. Well, of course, the next time the mother-in-law came over, she gasped when she saw the brooch and said, "Uncle Henry never lived in Maryland." And so Laura had to confess that she destroyed the brooch and tried to have it fixed. Well, the mother-in-law's response was, "Why did you go through that trouble? I hate that brooch." And so she gave, her true meaning of the object, but she passed it down to Laura because that's what they did in that family. So we are giving you tools so that you can really talk with your families about what they are thinking about as far as family members, as far as what they would like to have. We have 2 worksheets for you in the handout that Chelsea put in the chat box. You can print off at your leisure. The first worksheet is for the personal property owner. So if it is your stuff you're thinking of, it's for you. There are 3 columns, and it's a 2-sided handout, so you can make as many copies as you want and list all of the possessions you would really love to know that they're going to go to someone special. So you have a chance to describe the item, Write down why the item is special so you can give it a little bit of provenance. You can tell the story about it. And then who should receive it and why. Because it's a working document, you can have several names for who should receive it and why at this point, because you may not know who should get it. You may think, oh, well, one of my 5 kids should get it, so you put down all 5 names. Or you may have an item that you clearly know should go to someone, and that's exactly what you want to have happen. So this is a worksheet for you, and then we have a worksheet for potential receivers. Next slide, Chelsea. It looks similar, but you see at the top it says personal property receivers. You have a chance to hear from the people that you love, to hear what they say about your possessions. They have an opportunity to think through and independently write down their wishes and to give that to you. So they can describe items they're interested in. In the middle column, they can write down, this item's special to me because. They can tell you why they want it. And then they can also tell you, if someone else received this item, I would feel. So they may say, I'd love to have your wedding ring, Mom. It's special to me because I'm the oldest daughter and I would love to have it. I feel like it should be mine. If someone else received it, I would be crushed. I would be okay, whatever. Now, the back of this handout, we don't have a slide for it, but it differs a little bit. It gives people the opportunity to speak on behalf of someone else. So they can describe an item and say, and answer in the column, this item should go to because. So I have an opportunity, let's say I am the eldest daughter, and I can say Mom's wedding ring should go to Kathy because she took care of Mom when she was sick, my younger sister, this is true, and I think she should have it. So it gives people a chance to speak on someone else's behalf who may not speak up. All right, so that is a good way to help you identify the meaning of your objects and what your objects might mean to someone else. Now, as far as using props for sharing family stories, this is referencing keepsakes. Everyone on this call has a keepsake, something in your possession that you say, oh, this is a keepsake. This is something that's special to me. And why is it special? It's usually special because it has a story attached to it in some way, or it was given to you by someone special. It can be extremely valuable from a monetary standpoint. It can be valueless from a monetary standpoint. But what makes it more valuable for future family members is when it has provenance, when it has an origin, when it has a story of the origin of the object. So when stories go along with the objects, they carry far more weight for family members. And you should think about some of your possessions, and if they are possessions that have stories attached, here are some questions that you can ponder. Perhaps you received something from your grandmother or grandfather, or even you have something in your possession right now that has been in the family for 4 generations or 5 generations. It's really important to take the time to think that through and write down all you know about that possession, because it does help in sharing family stories. It does help in keeping those possessions alive through the generations. Now imagine how many treasures that have been discarded by families because there was not provenance. There was no story attached to it. There might be beautiful, glorious things that really looked mundane to family members when they were cleaning things out and didn't really know that, you know, this small item had great significance in my family. So now's your chance to, as you think through items, to write down or jot down stories. You can even keep a little steno book as far as writing down the stories, and they don't necessarily have to be attached to the item itself, but you can start to write down stories about special items in your family. All right.
All right, I'm going to jump in real quick. If you were on last week, you saw the picture of the bats last week when we were talking about decluttering. Well, this is a picture of my grandma on the left, and she was an amazing baseball player. This picture was from the 1940s, and we have her baseball glove It is framed, and we have a collage of all the articles from when she was a pitcher, done, in the background of the collage. And one time I asked my grandma, after teaching this so many times, it took me many, many years, but I finally asked my grandma, can I have your baseball glove? And I am one of 16 grandkids, and my mom's the oldest of 7 daughters. And my grandma says, well, that'll have to be decided after I'm gone. And I was kind of crushed a little bit, but because it took me a long time to have the guts to ask for that baseball glove. But of all my cousins, I am the one who has the love of ball like she does. And I still play. And, I remember as a child playing ball in her front yard, and we used trees for bases. And the picture at the bottom is me taking her to Wrigley because she is a Cubs fan and I am a Cardinals fan. And so I took her to Wrigley to see her Cubbies play, and they played the Cardinals that day. So anyway, what I can share is that I have 3 of her baseball bats. So the bats that we played when we were kids playing with her. And so the picture on the right, if you weren't here to hear our declutter lesson last week, 3 of the bats that I have hanging on my living room wall actually are bats from her when we were cleaning out her farmhouse. I got 3 of her bats when she was downsizing. So I do not have the glove, I'll say yet, because I still have hope, but I did get 3 of the baseball bats. So the second, third, and the bottom bat are all from her. So that was just a story about, I had to finally have the guts to ask for the ball glove, but my Aunt Jean is actually the one who did the framing of the ball glove. And so I'm pretty sure my grandma didn't feel like she could give it to me because my Aunt Jean took the time to frame it and research at the library all the old newspaper articles to get all of her all of her pitching statistics and that kind of stuff, all the games that she pitched. So anyway, I just wanted to share this, that, sometimes it is complicated, and sometimes you have to have the guts to ask for things. And sometimes you might not get exactly what you want, but you might get something that is wonderful too. So I just wanted to share that, as well as what Molly said about sometimes you might not know the story behind something. We were cleaning out my great-grandpa's farmhouse, and we found a trunk, and it wasn't until my grandpa came in and he said that was the trunk that the family had come over with all their possessions from Germany. And so when people were going through it, it was just an old trunk, but it wasn't until somebody told the history behind the trunk that they knew that was, quite the heirloom for the family. So it is important to share that with younger generations. So when they're cleaning things out, they don't just think, oh, what is that? And, toss something that somebody might want in the family. So I'll toss it back to you. Oh, and somebody last week asked about the baseball bat holders. We ordered them on Amazon. So, and yes, I do have a copy of that picture. It's framed.
When Chelsea, when you were talking, someone wrote in the chat box, waiting until after she's gone might not be the best idea. And which is true, it might not be the best idea, but it's what your grandma wants to do. And she is the owner of that. And that is her decision about what she wants to do. But it does leave the decision-making to the family then, which, as we say, might not be the most ideal, but you have a family that would probably do its best to make sure that the fairest thing happens anyway. But as I say that, even in the closest of families, there can be disagreements about things. So when we think in terms of distribution options and their consequences, obviously it won't come as any surprise to any of you that gifting before death is the most assured way to know that what the owner of the possessions wants to have happen actually does happen. But there are several options I'll go through with you, and they all have pros and cons. They all have good things about them, and then they all have, cons or consequences. And gifting before death, of course, has pros and cons too. It is a way to make sure that the intended recipient actually gets the possession that you want for them. You have an opportunity to watch that person enjoy or use the possession or the belonging. But the con to that, you may have, I'll tell you a story. One of my audience members had a beautiful bench in her foyer. She never married. She had this house full of beautiful antiques and had one living niece. And the niece would come over and take care of her and bring her dinners and visit with her. And the niece always commented about the bench in the foyer, that she loved it. So one day this woman said, my niece came over. She again commented on the bench. And I told her, you know what? You have your van today. Why don't you take it? I think you should have it. So the niece took it. The next time the aunt went over to the niece's house, she walked in, and here in the front door, at the front door in the foyer, was the bench, but on it were piles of wet coats and wet boots from the kids who just came in from playing outside in the snow. And the woman said, you know, I was flabbergasted. Here I thought she wanted it. I thought she would love it the way I love it. Now, if you think about that, she did love it. She found it to be useful. She found it to be something that would help her, and as far as organization with her big family and the coats and the boots. But the aunt was forever upset about it because she thought she would cherish it the way the aunt did. So that is one of the cons of gifting in your lifetime. Another consequence is you may gift something and then never see it again. You may gift something and wonder whatever happened to it. You know, I gave that to my daughter, but she never displays it. I don't know what she did with it. Or you may gift something and then discover that the recipient sold it or gave it away to somebody else. So there are pros and cons of gifting in your lifetime. And frankly, you don't want to give the toaster away today if you want toast tomorrow. So the timing of your gifts, if you are gifting in your lifetime, are also important. You have to really think about what you want to do and when you want to do it. Another distribution option is preparing a list of items and specifying intended recipients. I can't tell you the countless people that tell me, oh, I made a list. I made a list. One lady told me, I made a list and it's in the safety deposit box. Now, if you make a list, you don't want to put it in the safety deposit box because sometimes the house might be sold, the possession's gone through before anyone realizes there's a safety deposit box. So if you make a list, you should prepare a list that is, I guess it's as complete as it can be at the time of preparation, right? But the truth of the matter is we still acquire things as we go through life. So you may need to make more than one list. And if you do make a list, one person in my group told me this and I thought it was brilliant. She said, I made a list. I have 4 sons and they came over one day for a holiday and I had 4 copies of the list. I had each son look at it and sign it and date it. So we were all in agreement that this was the current list and this was the final list. So that is another way, making a list. It has pros and cons, but it is a relatively good idea. Gifting back to initial givers. So often I hear people say, well, whatever my kids gave me, they can just have back when I'm gone. And that's also another viable option. It's very good if you remember what was given by whom. That's great. One of the drawbacks, if you have a family like mine, as my parents grew older, we knew less and less and less what to give them for holidays and other occasions. So we often went in on gifts and bought nicer, more expensive gifts. So that can be a drawback with that. But for the most part, gifting or giving back what was given is another way to distribute possessions. And the last 2 I'll group together: lottery method and auctions and sales. Now, auctions and sales are, as you see in the picture, it looks like a yard sale or garage sale. Many families do private auctions, public auctions, garage sales, yard sales, estate sales, maybe private for the family first and then public. Sometimes people have estate sales themselves, and then they do something with the money as a family, or sometimes the family takes care of it and does something, pools the money and does something as a family. There's all kinds of ways. Sometimes people will have sales within the family with play money, outbidding each other. They'll have little auctions. So there's many, many ways you can do auctions or sales. And the lottery method is probably the fairest thing you can do. That's pretty much drawing for something, pulling straws or drawing cards or drawing the possession out, or however you draw, or lottery method is probably the fairest way when more than one person wants something and you can't come to an agreement on it. Be willing to draw for it. And sometimes those rules can be made at the beginning of a transfer of possession session, where you say, okay, if more than one person wants something and we can't make a decision, we're going to draw for it. So that can be an agreed upon good way to draw for things when more than one person wants something. Two very ineffective methods are the verbal promises and the masking tape. The verbal promise, the someday, honey, this will be yours, or someday you can have this, or you can have this when I'm gone. When, as we saw many examples through this hour, that does not work, because it's too easy to say, oh, well, mom promised that to me too, or, it can be really bad, right? Chelsea, the Dear Abby example. The masking tape example, my grandma was famous for this. If someone mentioned they wanted something, she put their name on masking tape and put it underneath that object. And it served well for our family, but the consequence of that, or the reason why it's not so hot, is that if you put masking tape on something in 2020 and the decisions are made in 2041, that masking tape might have dropped off in about 2030. So masking tape or other things can dry rot and fall off. It can be taken off. It's not a sure, foolproof method as far as distribution. Now, as far as managing conflicts as they arise, disagreements can happen in families. Emotions are high. Oftentimes, families are in crisis when decisions like this are made. If there hasn't been a plan prior, sometimes family members are doing this while knowing that the house has to be sold and mom is probably not going to leave the nursing home, or mom is gone. So to avoid conflict, one way to reduce chances of conflict is to agreeing to manage conflict as it arises. There are 4 sources of conflict typically. One is a lack of communication or miscommunication. And of course, we know a lot of disagreements revolve around not communicating well. Having different attitudes or values, beliefs about things. If you have a family member who thinks that all of grandma's things are just junk and we should pull up a dumpster, and another family member that thinks that everything in the house is a treasure, that can be cause for conflict, especially with the speed and the speed of going through possession. So differing attitudes can cause that. Different expectations about roles, tensions around power and control. In other words, if someone is assuming a leadership position and is acting a little bit bossy, that can be cause for conflict. And we come to the table sometimes with baggage. So unresolved prior conflicts can only exacerbate a situation that is already deemed kind of a crisis situation. So ways to get around that. This is always the part of the lesson that I feel it feels so shallow for me to say these things, but these things, when done right and well, can go a long way. And one is really listening to each other, listening carefully with an open mind, not always agreeing. We don't always agree, but really try to accept each other's opinions and show respect for each other, even if you don't agree, as you come to some sort of compromise. Speaking without finger pointing or blaming, clarifying the problems together, respecting each other's opinions, agreeing to disagree. If you can't come to an agreement, sometimes agreeing to disagree, or Doing a lot of give and take to resolve conflicts can go a long way as well. It's better to agree to disagree than to fracture a relationship over being right or having to have the last word. And sometimes mediators may be helpful, and it can be a formal mediator, but even someone else who's a friend of the family to help out, or someone who has an unbiased opinion of things can maybe help in a situation if conflicts are a problem. In closing, we like to close this lesson pie plate. Back in the 90s, we've been teaching pie plate at University of Illinois for quite some time. And I was presenting one day, and a gentleman closed, or after the lesson came up, and told me that he had a neighbor who lived in a palatial estate. And she lived there by herself. She was getting ready to move into a retirement village, a take care of you for the rest of your life, multi-level of care retirement village. And she wanted to have a public community auction to dispose of some of her beautiful things. So the neighbors got together and helped her get the house ready for public auction. And she had many, many different items, had a beautiful great room where I just envisioned it much like Sotheby's, where the public was invited, and she had professional auctioneers who were helping that day. She had several items. The auction starts. The first 3 items that come up for bid, this woman, the owner, was the highest bidder. She bought them back herself. So if she was the top bidder on her own possessions, was she ready to downsize? She might have been ready in her head, but she wasn't ready in her heart. So we leave you with the idea, it is your stuff, your possessions. You make a plan for what you want to do, and whatever you want to do is your decision. Okay? Your stuff is your stuff. Chelsea?
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I did throw the evaluation link in the chat box. It will be sent to you by email. You'll also get a link to the handout, so you will have that. Also, we wanted to bring your attention to next week's session called Being Mindful During Difficult Times, as well as we are going to continue doing educational sessions after this session, these sessions of the Discover Wellness at Home's wrap up at the end of April, and then we're going to begin a brain health session. Oops, I thought we were on that one next, my bad. And that one's going to begin in May. So May and June, we will be doing a Discover Brain Health webinar series on Thursdays from 2 to 3. So if you're interested in that series, you can register at go.illinois.edu/Discover Brain Health. So if you're interested in that program, you can look for information about that. Also, we are in the midst of our nutrition wellness in the brain. We have 2 more sessions coming up. April 29th, we're going to talk about nutrition wellness into adulthood. And on May 13th, nutrition wellness and aging. If you're interested in either of those sessions, you can register at go.illinois.edu/lifespan wellness. So those 2 sessions are coming up. Carla can add those links in her follow-up email to the participants as well. If there are any questions, please throw those questions in the chat box. And I'm going to unmute everybody. So if you're on the phone, you can ask a question as well. So you can unmute your phone by hitting *6 if you want to unmute your phone and ask a question. And let's see, somebody asked